Hello, sixth grade. We're going to do a quick review on multiplying fractions. Now, we were multiplying fractions last week when we were, or was that this week? Either way, when we were looking for equivalent fractions, right? You took a fraction like 1/6 and you multiplied the numerator and denominator by the same thing in order to come up with an equivalent fraction, right? And we can do that because 5/5 is equivalent to 1. So multiplying 1/6 times 1, it still has a value of 1/6. It just takes on a different form. So we would, when we did that, we multiplied the numerators. 1 times 5 is 5. And 6 times 5 is 30. And in really the simplest way you might say to multiply fractions is just to multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. The problem with that is that just like in this case, your result, your product may not be in its simplest form. And that's always our goal, is to put our fraction answers in their simplest form. So here's a fraction problem, 2/3 times 5/8. And again, if you follow the procedure, you could multiply the numerators. 2 times 5 is 10, and 3 times 8 is 24. But what you probably notice is that 10/24 is not in its simplest form. So now we have to take another step to simplify this. And we talked about this being, the step being that you look for the greatest common factor and you divide the numerator and denominator by that. So 10 and 24, the greatest common factor is 2. So now we're dividing both the numerator and the denominator by 2 to get 5/12. Okay? What I'm going to suggest today is that there is an easier way to do that. And it's one of my favorite mathematical ideas. And it's simplify first before you multiply. Now, the reason that I think this is such a big deal is that when you get to algebra, in 8th and 9th grade, you're going to find that this is essential. So the more you do it now in 6th and 7th grade, the better prepared you will be. So what does this mean, simplify before you multiply? Actually, let's go back to that problem we just did. What it means is if you think about what we did originally, we said 2 times 5 in the numerator and 3 times 8 in the denominator. Okay, now we know that the commutative property says it doesn't matter what order we multiply 2 and 5. We could do it the other way. We could also write this as 5 times 2 and 3 times 8. Now what you might notice is that we have now a fraction of 2/8 inside this multiplication. That's not simplest form. We could simplify that. We could keep the 5 in the numerator and the 3 in the denominator, but now instead of 2/8, call this 1/4, because 2/8 simplifies to 1/4. And now if we multiply, you can see we get the same result as before when we multiplied and then simplified. So all we're doing is reversing the order. Instead of multiplying and simplifying, we are simplifying and then multiplying. You try saying that fast. Okay, so let's try a few. Okay, so I have 10/12 times 4/10. Well, first of all, neither one of those is simplest form to begin with. But what you might notice is that this 10 in the numerator and this 10 in the denominator both have a factor of 10. So if you divide 10 by 10, you get 1. And we could turn both of those into a 1. 4 and 12 have a common factor of 4. And so if we divide by 4, we get 1 here and we get 3 here. So now the problem in the numerators, we have 1 times 1 is 1. And in the denominators, we have 1 times 3 is 3. So 1/3. We've multiplied and we don't have to simplify because we already took care of it. Okay? 12/13 times 1/4. Well, remember when we simplify as we're multiplying fractions, we need to simplify a numerator with a denominator. So you could look at this numerator and denominator can't be simplified. There's no common factor other than 1. This one can't either. But this numerator, this denominator share a common factor of 4. And so if we divide each of them by 4, we can then multiply 3 times 1 and 13 times 1, and our our product is in its simplest form. Okay, so it's a very handy strategy. You know what I find in all my years of doing this is that some students embrace this idea and some students are very resistant. So I hope you're going to be one of those that will embrace it. Now, what about mixed numbers? Well, the idea is exactly the same. You're going to take a mixed number and turn it into a fraction and then try to simplify before you multiply. So say we had 2 1/2 times 3/5. Okay? So anytime we deal with fractions, mixed numbers, we want to turn them into fractions in order to do the multiplication. So 2 1/2, we would say 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5, is the same as 5/2 times 3/5. Hopefully you can see there is a numerator-denominator combination that can share a factor, and that would be 5 and 5. Have a greatest common factor of 5. So divide each of them by 5. And now we have 1 times 3 in the numerator and 2 times 1 in the denominator. And when we multiply, if we get an improper fraction, we want to turn it back into a mixed number. So 2 goes into 3 one time with 1 left over. 3/2 is the same as 1 1/2. Okay, so that is what it takes to multiply fractions. So the keys: simplify before you multiply. If you have mixed numbers, turn them into fractions and then simplify before you multiply. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to give it a try. I'd like for you in your books to look at page 82. And we're going to do problems 1 through 10. And you're going to upload it and show me on Google Classroom, okay? Good luck.